Is it better?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move it.
Okay, I will introduce it in Polish, so will be better for the most of participants. So, SJTSI jest we współpracy z TMMi już od 26 czerwca 2018 roku. TMMi Foundation jest organizacją non-profit z siedzibą w Irlandii, która ma na celu wspieranie firm na całym świecie w podnoszeniu jakości i wydajności rozwijanego przez nie oprogramowania. Tym samym zostaliśmy pierwszym i jedynym polskim oficjalnym oddziałem TMMi świadczącym usługi certyfikacji oraz oceny i akredytacji firm w zakresie standardu TMMi. A flagowym produktem TMMi Foundation jest test Maturity Model Integration, czyli model dojrzałości organizacji w zakresie procesu testowania oraz zarządzania testami, który dostarcza wskazówek i dobrych praktyk umożliwiających organizacjom systematyczne zwiększanie swojej dojrzałości w obszarze procesów testowych. Cieszy się on bardzo szybko rosnącym zainteresowaniem na świecie i jest obecnie światowym standardem w zakresie doskonalenia procesów testowania. Jako lokalny oddział TMMi zajmujemy się również dostosowywaniem i tłumaczeniem dokumentów związanych z TMMi. Takim dokumentem jest Syllabus, którego pierwszy rozdział został już przez SJTSI przetłumaczony i opublikowany i można go pobrać pod adresem, który widzicie na ekranie. Prace nad kolejnymi rozdziałami trwają i mamy nadzieję, że w najbliższym czasie uda nam się udostępnić całość Syllabusa, żeby też było łatwiej zapoznać się z całością nie tylko po angielsku, ale też w naszym rodzimym języku. SJTSI jest też oficjalną reprezentacją TMMi na rynku polskim. W związku z czym w ramach swojej działalności polski oddział dostarcza i organizuje egzaminy certyfikacyjne na TMMi Professional, świadczy usługi organizacji w zakresie spełnienia wymagań standardu TMMi oraz przyznaje akredytację firmom szkoleniowym. Taką firmą, z którą mamy już nawiązaną współpracę i dzięki której możemy przeprowadzać egzaminy i możemy zwiększać ilość certyfikowanych specjalistów w Polsce, jest Amber Team. I jeżeli bylibyście zainteresowani, to zapraszamy na ich stronę, tam znajdziecie wszystkie szczegóły dotyczące tego, jak wygląda szkolenie, ile trwa, jak wygląda egzamin. Jesteśmy też otwarci na nawiązanie współpracy z kolejnymi partnerami, jeżeli tacy zechcą z nami współpracować. I tutaj oddaję już głos Sebastianowi, który też powie parę słów na temat tego, dlaczego dzisiaj ten webinar i co planujemy w najbliższym czasie. Także dziękuję, Seba, tutaj do Ciebie głos oddaję.
Yes, so let me switch to English, at least my Polish English. So the idea why this webinar we decide to organize. So despite that we are promoting TMMi in Poland recently, one of the people that was attending the TestVars conference came to us with some kind of question and the issues that in his opinion, the testing process, well, the testing activities are quite good. They're delivering the quite good software with the right quality. They have implemented many good practice. They have automation, all those stuff. But unfortunately, recently they released some product and they released with some bug and issue was on the production. So then his point was that okay, so maybe we should look more wider on the process level. Maybe we should take care of the quality not only on the activities of the testing, but more spread. In that position, that brings me the concept that we have the answer for that kind of situation, that probably you're often, well, hopefully not often, that probably you will find it in your everyday work, and that's why we bring those idea of the few webinars that we would like to organize in order to show you that there is, good practices and there's people on the worldwide that are able to help you and to give you some kind of assessment and that could have spent some time on your processes and point the maybe not the weakness, but the opportunities to improve. And just to begin, that I would like to invite I will just want to start with the biggest the best known person of the TMMi, the person who is talking about this by many years on many conferences, and the CEO of those organizations. And I think that the best person that we can start with talking and the promoting TMMi in Poland from Eric. And Eric approved our invitation to talk about improving the testing with the TMMi. So thank you, Eric, for accepting our invitation, and the stage is yours. So I stop sharing, and now it's your time.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian, for this introduction. Let me also share my screen. Let's see if that we can get this to work. Are we okay? You can see my screen? Yeah, good, good,
yes.
Good. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome all of you to this webinar on behalf of the Polish TMMi local chapter. I will have, I don't know, 1.5 hours approximately talking about TMMi. Talking, you might say, improve your testing with TMMi. You already said that it's not only about the activities, it's also about processes, it's about many, many things. In this introduction, I will talk about the model, which I've now learned is also available in Polish, which is even better, of course. I will briefly mention how does TMMi fit in the current agile world. We'll talk about TMMi assessments. How does that work? There's been a recent survey in the world of TMMi, and I will share you some interesting results. Of course, there are many more things to talk about, but we will talk about that. And finally, some comments about implementing or using TMMi and how to get involved. Okay, so many things to cover. Of course, anything can be done broader, but I think this is a good overview of what is TMMi, how can you use it, what is the model, how to use it agile, what are the benefits you can achieve, all these things together. Okay, well, this is who I am. Sebastian already introduced me. I am currently, as you said, the CEO of the TMMi Foundation and also one of the authors of the TMMi, and the rest I think you can read on this slide. Not that important. As you can see, I have authored some books in the past. Okay, let's start. First of all, if you look at testing today, and this is true, I think, in most countries, so I guess also in Poland, is that we have many, many challenges. The systems are getting, the systems we are developing are critical for the business today. I remember when I started doing a software development, background as a programmer, it was like a supporting process. Today, having good IT is critical for business success. Many companies in that sense are in a world what I call digital transformation. So on one hand, you can see is that IT and software is critical. On the other hand, you're seeing that we are getting systems being built that are increasingly growing in size, that are increasingly being more and more complex for whatever reasons, that are using all kinds of new technologies. And if we are building one system, it has interfaces to other systems. And so it's not that we're depending on our own system only, but on only other systems as well. If we are testing today, it's usually tested with a number of devices, number of browsers, number of OSs. And these are all huge testing challenges. These are all things that we need to take care of. And there's security. And sometimes we are outsourcing our software development to another country, sometimes even. And then comes back, needs to be tested. So there are many, many challenges in testing. And it's not like that if you see all those challenges, you can say, oh, but that's okay. Give me 2 months extra, and that's okay. No, it has to be finished yesterday. So in that sense, I'm saying is that it's not even a question of only having the, you might say the challenges, but also time to market is critical. So we have to be efficient as well. And if we look at software development, and there's been people who've been measuring things like defect density for over many, many years, we see the defects in software development only decreasing very, very slowly. So we are in a world where testing is critical to business success. But we're also in a world where testing is facing many, many challenges. This is a poster from a project I was involved in. And it says, Gib niemals auf, which is German for saying, never give up. And to be clear, in this case, the frog is a testing team. So this is the world we are living in. This is the challenges we're facing today. And some Dutch, I'm very sorry for that, but I try to follow a website, which is called nu.nl. And just to show you what is the world we're living in. And some Dutch, software fout means software defect. It says here, thousands of prisoners released early because of software defect. 9112, which is 911 for international, is stopped functioning because of software defect. Chrysler recall software defect. Americans taken away from their houses because of software defect. A mortgage system was doing miscalculations. Medication shortage at hospitals because of software defect. And even worse, problems in a nuclear power plant, software defect. So this is the world we are living in. And I'm not saying testing is the only way forward, for sure not, but it shows us, I think, that today testing is critical for business success. It's even, you might say, safety critical in many, many businesses. And if we look at testing, I think there's a number of ways you can look at to improve your testing. And I will discuss in this tutorial the one called TMMi and test process. But just to give you context, I think one of the things we talk about also is getting good people in place. And the Polish board is also, I think, the ISTQB board. Training people, giving people more knowledge. That's one angle of improving. But if you only train people without caring about the organizational side of things, without caring about the processes, we get very much in a hero culture where it depends on people only. Of course, we also talk about test automation as a way forward. But of course, test automation depends on the quality of the test cases. So again, only automation doesn't do the job. And the third angle is test process. That we have a common way of working, that we try to improve that we have defined that. So to me, achieving software product quality, achieving good testing, and test improvement has three angles. Think about the people who are testing, give them the right knowledge and skills, consider where you can use test automation, and also consider and think about the test process. And I have one slide on people side, but only one slide. Because if we talk about tester skills, I think today we are talking very much about what they call the T-shaped concept. A tester, of course, should be trained in testing. And this is why we have ISTQB. Test management, test design skills, defect management skills, security testing skills. But also, I think, what we expect from testers today is things like scripting, requirements engineering. We expect testers to have domain knowledge. If you're working in a medical industry, that you understand how your devices are actually being used in operation. Soft skills. And this is not only for testers, because we talk about tester skills, but also developers are testing, but also business analysts are testing. So on one hand, I think if we talk about improving software testing or system testing, we should consider ensuring that our testers and those who are testers have the right knowledge and skills, which is done through training, through workshops, through coaching, sharing best practice and the like. Okay. Let's now move towards the process side of things. Let us talk about how can we improve testing using models such as TMMi. And my first explanation is, so what is TMMi? Because the way I see it, there's a lot of, I call them content-based models. There's books out there, there are ISO standards, there's ISTQB classes, there is many things out there. But suppose you are asked, you are allowed, if you want, to go to an ISTQB advanced test management course. You are allowed to go to an advanced test manager course, which is 5 days. And it is a good course. You'll probably write somewhere, this is a nice idea. This is a nice idea. This is a nice idea. And at the end of 5 days, you could have something like, I don't know, maybe 20 or even more ideas of things you can do in your own organization. And the question then is, which of these 20 or more ideas is the one which fits best in your organization? Which fits best with your level of testing maturity? And this is where things like TMMi come in. They show you where you are on the testing maturity ladder and what the next step is and where your recommendations are. Which parts are still missing, take the next step. It gives you priority, if you want, on all these ideas that you have from courses, from books, from standards or whatever. So TMMi is like a, if you want, a roadmap. Which things are tomorrow most interesting, most beneficial to start improving? The TMMi is actually developed by the TMMi Foundation, a non-profit organization based in the UK. And when they started in 2005, which is already more than 15 years ago, there were 2 main objectives. The first one is to develop the worldwide TMMi standard, a model which will become the world leading model for test process improvement. For test process improvement, meaning define the processes which are essential to good quality testing. At the same time, they wanted a framework for assessments, so that when we do an assessment in China or in the UK or in Brazil or in Poland, we would follow the same steps to assess a company. And following the same steps to assess a company would mean it is actually standardized around the globe. And that could be the basis for certifying a company against a TMMi. So the idea is also that if a company says, I'm doing things according to level 2 TMMi, you can ask for an assessor and you can have a label, I'm a certified level 2, level 3, 4, 5 company. company. A framework. So two things have been developed. The full model was, by the way, published in 2010. As you can see, available in a number of languages: English, Chinese, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and I've now learned also in Polish. Very important, of course. And the model was not like, let's develop a new model. No, there was ISTQB syllabi in place. There are IEEE standards in place. There is ISO standards in place. There is TMMi, a model for software development improvement. There are best practice libraries. So basically all of these, I would say, documents, standards were used as an input to the TMMi model. So the practices from ISTQB, if you want, are actually regrouped in TMMi, showing you which ones are the most interesting for you for your next step in becoming more mature. TMMi is an independent model. Independent means it's independent of the life cycle. So it can be used with, let's say, waterfall V model, Agile, DevOps. It's independent of a testing method that you're using. And also, you may want to use it together with TMMi, but you can also use it independently of TMMi. And today, this is, I think, very important to understand. It is confirmed by IEEE. It's the world leading model for test process improvement. If you look at uptake of organizations doing test process improvement, by far, TMMi is now #1. Interesting, some background. Of course, you cannot conquer the world from the UK. Well, I don't think you can, at least. And that means there are now local organizations around the globe that support TMMi and organize TMMi locally. They do local marketing, they will organize training courses, they do webinars like this one. So today there are 23 local chapters, and you can see the spots here where they are: Africa, Australia, China, Malaysia, I guess, some Brazil, Mexico, US, Canada, and a lot in Europe, as you can see, together covering 51 countries in the world. So they are the local representation of TMMi. And I'm happy to say there's also, of course, a local chapter in Poland. So if afterwards you can ask me questions, but of course you can also go to the contact persons of the local TMMi local chapter in Poland. Okay, to the model. The main picture, I might say. Excuse me. What we can see already here is there are 5 levels of maturity. Level 1, initial, which is the level is for free. You're always level 1. And you can grow step by step towards level 5. This is what they call, it's a staged model. And within each level, you can see what they call so-called process areas. So level 2 has 5 process areas. Level 3 has 5 process areas, 3 at level 4, and 3 at level 5. So basically what you see is this model is your main guidance on how to improve, how to priority, how to focus your test improvement activities. So if you're a level 1 company, these are the ones which should be in focus. If you're level 2, this is your next step, and further on. So it gives you, if you want, a guideline and guides on how to improve. For those who are interested, on average, of course, there's an average. It takes approximately around 9 months for a company start to do TMMi to become a fully level 2 company. And another 6 months if you move from 2 to 3. Okay, just some information. Let's look at the model more in detail. And first of all, very briefly, level 1. Level 1 means it's for free. So there are no process areas, no maturity goals. And typically you would find things like testing is under pressure, lack of resources, no trained staff, no tools. If you look at how test cases are developed, we're not using test design techniques, very ad hoc, unit testing, is not really taking place, and the success depends very much on the heroes. It's not reproducible. This is not a way you can actually say we can move ahead as a company. Level 2, things become different. Level 2, you will see that testing, if you look at unit testing, is clearly defined. So it's not like debugging or compiling is testing. No, no, no. We have a defined unit testing process. Test levels are clearly defined. I'm not going to explain all the terminology in this slide, sorry for that. But by test levels, I mean things like unit testing, integration testing, system testing, system integration testing, UAT testing. And these are terms, but what do they mean in your company? We have what is called in TMMi a defined testing strategy. That means if you go to person A, who's a developer, and ask him or her, what is unit testing? He will explain to you how unit testing works. And if you go to another developer, you will get the same explanation. So we have a defined unit testing process, clear techniques, clear exit criteria. Of course, if you look at management, they may still see that testing is a lifecycle phase that follows coding. We, as testers, know better. We'll see that change over time. There is test planning taking place, but not always as early as we hoped it would be. There is also process tracking and reporting, so that a lot of things are in place. Test designs are being used. And some reviews are taking place. And we can answer the question now at level 2, is the product built as defined, as specified by the requirements? Now, if we go back to the model picture, which is the previous slide, let's blow up level 2 and have a look more in detail on these process areas. Level 2, we call level 2 a managed, actually has 5 process areas. And of these 5, there are 4 that I call, these are project-oriented process areas. These are at the heart of every project. There's no one listening now who will say, this is not relevant for us. This is about, level 2 is about learning to survive in today's critical and difficult projects. At level 2, we talk about test planning. And test planning, to be more accurate, is not about writing an IEEE 829 30-page test plan. Test planning is about upfront thinking, doing a risk analysis, doing some kind of estimation. So test planning is in place. And based on the plan, we monitor. We monitor product quality. We monitor our resources. And if we deviate from expectations or plan, we take actions, control actions. So there is, you might say, a good level of test management in place. There is also test design execution. We use test design techniques. We use test design. We write, if you want, test conditions. And by the way, also things like exploratory testing could fit in the whole issue of test design. Because in exploratory testing, you use test chapters. Of course, we execute them based on the test cases. And also, there is a test environment that is managed and controlled. It's available if you need it, and looks as much as possible as real life. So what we have here is very much a project-oriented level. Process areas at the heart of any project. But we also have the one on top, test policy and strategy. And what I mean by that is that what TMMi means is that before you start doing TMMi, you should start thinking about, why are we doing this? What is the business problem? What are we trying to achieve? You should not do TMMi because of TMMi. You should have a rationale why you are investing money and time in becoming level 2. So as an example, for instance, I was once involved in testing these kind of machines, and the policy was clearly, we need lead time reduction in testing. That is the main problem. We are always too late in the market, and as such, we are losing the competition. And if you know this and understand this, then of course, you start thinking about test planning and, hey, risk-based testing. Focus your testing. Get involved earlier. So you start thinking everything you do should be in the context of lead time reduction. That would be a very different policy to, we want better quality because our customers are complaining about the quality of our products. So a policy is in place. And without going into detail of the policy, I always say, think about things like test targets. So what are issues that we're focusing on? Is performance an issue? Is security an issue? And those which are an issue, let's start developing skills and knowledge on that. What about employees? Is testing a role or is it a function in your organization? That's policy. If you are a test manager, are you allowed to say something about unit testing, yes or no? How is independence organized? Which basic process are you using? So a number of, I would say, basic questions on testing that you want to discuss with management are a starting point for doing TMMi. And to me, even more important, what you're writing is that all of a sudden you're discussing with management the importance of testing, and you're discussing with them, what does this mean for the business? Because TMMi says, I want money to make steps in the right direction. I want to do an investment. And investing is only meaningful if there's a business benefits in place. So a policy is part of already of TMMi level 2. If we move to level 3, again, very briefly, level 3, there's two things which you might say are in focus. One is early involvement. Because at level 2, you have shown the benefits of TMMi. Now you have the opportunity to get involved earlier. Of course, if you are doing it in an agile environment, it should, I'm saying it should because it's not always the case, you should already be involved from the start. So actually agile gives you some benefits already. And the other thing is very much difficult word, institutionalization. That means you embed and sustain the improvements for level 2 in the organization. There is now a defined test lifecycle, which is integrated with the development lifecycle. Test planning starts early. Processes are used and maintained across the organization. So we're working the same way across projects. Also important is testing is now recognized as a profession. And there's also all kinds of non-functional testing taking place. Level 2 is more focused about functionality. And of course, when the functionality works, we start moving towards, hey, and how good is it? What is performance? What is usability of it? And also we have peer reviews, again, early. If we look at the level 3 process areas, we can see a difference. We can now observe this is more organizational related, a test organization. A test training program is in place. A test lifecycle is in place, integrated with development. These are things on a higher level across the organization. And by the way, by organization, I don't mean it has to be an independent organization. It could be like a test guild in an agile context. We're talking about, we have 10 functions. We have a training program for testers. We have best practice libraries. We have templates in place. These are the next steps because you learned how to survive in your projects level 2. And now we're taking the next step in trying to become more mature. In addition, you have these engineering areas for non-functional testing and also for peer reviewing. So as I said already, level 3 is very much on moving, you might say shift left, popular term nowadays. Finding defects and focusing everything earlier. 2 more slides on level 3, and then very shortly 4 and 5. But this is, I call it, this is an integrated life cycle. So if you are in a organization level 3, when there is a requirement specification, and there is even a milestone or whatever defined, at the same time we will do test planning. At the same time we do upfront thinking. Because we know that doing test planning, doing risk analysis, means we will ask questions about requirements. We will find defects in requirements early. So it's a parallel process. And if we're writing a software design, at the same time we're doing a test design. Because we know that writing a test design means we find defects in software designs already. And we ask questions. So it's much more if you want, a parallel process than something which takes place at the end. And for coding, we do test scripting. And at the end, during execution. So this is a very, I might say, integrated life cycle, integrated way of working from testing towards development. Another one, and this is an example of the embedment or sustainment, is one of a client I was involved in, and the department is called STAR, Software Test and Release. And what they did is they made what they call a STAR clock. So you see here the months in a year, and everything which was not related to the testing in a project was part of the STAR clock. So for instance, performance appraisals would take place in February and March. Collect training metrics would take place in April. Review skills in May. Make sure we have a training program, this case. Make number improvement plans, audit plan. So everything which is not primary to the process, to the project, sorry, would actually be part of the STAR clock. So actually it was not forgotten. And it's sort of a planning for every year. How do we do all the things on our processes? Our yearly audit, our yearly gathering of process areas, of metrics, of performance indicators, of doing an external quick scan, of all these things, career discussions. Okay. Moving very quickly to level 4 and 5, the higher maturity levels. By the way, most companies that we come across, I come across, are level 1 companies. So yes, you can go to 4, you can go to 5, but I will be very happy if a number of companies in Poland would say, yes, I am 2 or I'm 3, because it means you are way better in testing than most companies in the world. 4 and 5, very briefly, is 4 is called measured. So it basically means everything about gathering data. Why? Because at level 3, we establish consistent processes across projects. So now measurements make sense. So we have what I call test measurement. By the way, measurement should always be focused. So things like goal question metric paradigm, you may know, is used there. We have what I call product quality evaluation. That's basically testing functional and non-functional, but making sure everything is now measured. We are measuring performance. We are measuring security. We are measuring usability. And from these metrics, we learn how to improve. We do what I call advanced reviews. So instead of saying, let's review the whole document, we now assume we have more stable quality. We sample. But also in advanced reviews, if we do reviews early on a part of the design and we find many defects, we may want to choose our dynamic testing, say, let's do some more testing here. So this is pretty advanced stuff, you might say. Level 5 is called optimization, meaning it never stops because you're never done. And things like quality control, process quality control, and defect prevention. Of course, you do defect prevention at lower levels, but it's now a major focus. So you might say at level 2 and 3, you're like, oh, I found a defect, let's solve it. At level 5, it's like, I found a defect. Why is the defect still there? So you might could say that the model goes from a defect detection, getting better at finding defects, to getting better at preventing defects. And there is test process optimization. That means there's a constant, continuous scan of the market. What are new tools? What are new technologies? What new, and try to, can they be used in our company? So levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. Very briefly, one thing about what does the process area look like? First of all, it has goals. So test planning has a goal, do a risk analysis, do estimation, develop a test plan, things like that. And to make clear already, only the goals in TMMi are mandatory. Only the goals are the required part. Anything below the goals is either expected, but it gives you flexibility on how to do it. So TMMi is not intended as a checklist. These are all the things you have to do. No. Look at the goal, study the goal, and look how you want to achieve the goal. And the practices are more or less expected. But if you do it differently, it's still okay. And on a lower level, you have things like sub-practices, examples, work products, elaborations. That means these are all kinds of suggestions. Like, this is the way to do it. This is, yeah. In total, by the way, TMMi is about 50 goals, I think, has around 200 practices, and has 1,000 suggestions. So there's a lot of meat in the TMMi. Very brief example. Process area 2.2, so level 2, second process area, test planning. You see here 5 goals. So these are the mandatory parts. Do a product risk assessment, establish a test approach, establish test estimates, develop some kind of documentation, and make sure we all in the team commit to the plan. And below that are the what they call SP practices. And again, TMMi is not saying write an IEEE 829 30-page test plan. You could say I will have a mind map or a PowerPoint presentation. Perfect. Do what works for you. Okay. The first part on, I would say, TMMi model. So you have a little bit, hopefully, understanding of what's the model looks like, how does it work. Of course, this is not a 2-day course on TMMi, but it's a starting point. Let us briefly look a few slides on how TMMi fits in an agile context. And at first, a number of, I would say, statements up front. I think, and not only me, I think agile is often doing the same things. You're still writing test cases. You still do upfront thinking. You still estimate. You still monitor. You may still document defects, but you are doing things slightly different. So as a result, what happened is there's a document being produced. I have no idea whether it's been translated into Polish as well, but maybe we can talk about it later on, which says if you are working in an agile context and want to use TMMi, this is how you should go about in doing test planning. This is how you should go about in doing test monitoring control. So it gives you an interpretation how to use TMMi in an agile context. Interesting, by the way, from our survey, which I will talk about later on, from the companies, from all companies that were assessed over the years with TMMi, 78% is also doing Agile for at least part of their projects. So you might say this shows you that TMMi and Agile are certainly not against each other. And if I personally look at Agile, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of Agile. But I'm also a person who's critical at Agile and say, okay, where is it looking good and how should we change that? How can we use it? Because to me, it's not a silver bullet. And interesting enough, there's been an annual State of Agile report, and people know it. It says here the 14th, but they recently actually issued the 15th annual State of Agile report. So they're going on for 15 years already. And their top 5 of benefits has been consistent for a number of years already. With Agile, we can better manage change in priorities. Great. With Agile, we have much more project visibility. Great. With Agile, we have increased our time to market. Perfect. With Agile, we have increased team morale or team motivation. Perfect. We have even increased our team productivity. So these are all perfect. However, what is missing from this list, at least from my perspective, is where is software quality? If we look at the annual State of Agile report, we are consistently seeing that at least 50% of the organization doing Agile are not saying they are expecting or seeing benefits in terms of product quality. Why? That's a whole different discussion, I think. Maybe it's because moving to Agile is not driven by product quality. And of course, you can achieve product quality with Agile. I'm just saying is going to Agile does not automatically solve your testing and product quality challenges. And this is confirmed by a report which has been there for many, many years. Also, if you look at Agile and TMMi, you see many people saying, oh, it doesn't fit with Agile because they don't understand TMMi. TMMi is not a model set already as a checklist. Start with your business objectives, with business value. Do the things that have added value for your business. And remember, only the goals are mandatory. All the rest is expected. You might say, look for alternative practices. You will do things differently in Agile, but the goal is still applicable. Ask the question, how do we achieve this practice? TMMi is not a tick-off list. Focus on added value. And if you are indeed doing level 2 and level 3, I have a doubt whether 4 and 5 are actually having added value in Agile context. So I would say from level 3 onwards, choose process areas, goals, have most added value. And there's no one saying TMMi requires large and little processes. Indeed, I think I would say the challenge is always to have as little process as possible. And especially I think with Agile, it's more about training should be focused because people over processes. People over processes doesn't mean no processes. If we look at Agile, to be honest, I come across many organizations that are saying we are Agile and they are, I call them Agile-like. Okay, they do stand-ups. They have a storyboard. Are they really Agile? Is the mindset really Agile? Question mark. The good thing also, if you go to a conference where it's talk about Agile testing, it seems to be talking all the time about unit testing, test-driven development, about test automation, which are great things, by the way, about exploratory testing. but there is more to testing than only these 3 items. So TMMi, if you want, is a reminder of all the critical practices that are needed to achieve software product quality. And you do need some process without losing the agile culture. You need to document how we work, but on a higher level. The great thing about agile, I think, is we talked about TMMi should focus on business objectives. If you are truly agile, you would have the business value at heart, which fits with TMMi. If you are truly agile, you will focus more on training than on process, which I like very much because people are important. You will look critical at how to write lean processes, how to make them as short as possible. So on one hand, you might say anyone doing agile will use TMMi, but at the same time will be critical at TMMi, which I like very much. They will have an agile mindset. They will look at simplicity. And the great thing about agile also is you have all these little steps. So improving can be done in iteration, project-based. So as a whole, you might say there is lean thinking. And again, as an example, and I'll use the same process area, test planning. And I said already, test planning is not about writing a technical test plan. It's about upfront thinking. And there is a planning, I think, at the release level, iteration level. And the goals from the model are still relevant, but the practices are different. A risk assessment, risk poker may be there, or mind mapping. Test approach, definition of done. A poster, planning poker for estimations with testers involved in testing issues. So if you look at this, and this is documented in the document I cited before, TMMi in an agile context, what you see is that the goals are still there, but the practices, the way that you achieve these goals is different. TMMi and Agile. Moving to my my third topic, which is assessments. Briefly explaining. Assessments in a TMMi context. Of course, assessments means, I told you in the beginning already, you can use the model and say, how good are you? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses compared to 2 or level 3? Which specific areas need to be prioritized? Which specific areas do I want to improve? Looking at all the suggestions which are in the model, you might identify some clear recommendations. For some people doing assessments, they want to actually verify they're actually level 2 or level 3. For some companies, it's about benchmarking. And also you see from IT companies say, hey, I want to be level 2 because if I'm level 2 or level 3, I have more chance of actually getting more projects. And looking at assessments, there are all kinds of assessments. Sometimes there are self-evaluations. People just take TMMi and start doing a self-evaluation. What you also see often is a guided self-evaluation. That means someone is asked who is a, let me say, a expert in TMMi, who may be a TMMi assessor, who will guide the self-evaluation, who will explain TMMi slightly better, who may ask critical questions, so the result of the self-evaluation becomes more reliable. And TMMi has basically 2 types of assessment. One is called informal assessment, which identifies strengths and weaknesses, but is less rigorous, and has formal assessments. More rigorous, and only through a formal assessment, you formally determine the maturity status, and only a formal assessment can be the basis for the certification of an organization. And a nice statement from Watts Humphrey one of the authors of TMMi, long time ago. If you don't know where you are, meaning if you have not assessed or looked at where am I, how mature am I, a map being the TMMi, won't help. How does it work within TMMi? As I said already in the beginning, the foundation, when they were started, had two main goals. On one hand, to develop the model, the TMMi model, and the other hand, a framework for how assessments can be done consistently throughout the world as a basis for certifying organizations. What has happened is there is a document called TMMi, TMMi Assessment Method Application Requirements, which defines the requirements for TMMi assessments, both formal and informal. As an organization, I think this was also mentioned in the introduction presentation, you can become accredited, not certified, accredited, and say, I am a consulting company, and I will define my own assessment process in line with these requirements and show that to the TMMi Foundation and become accredited as what I call a TMMi assessment service provider. So that company is accredited to run official assessments in their region or actually worldwide. Okay. And of course, they will have people that are able to do the job. So also they will have accredited TMMi assessors or lead assessors. So that company can go to a organization, local bank, assess them using their method. And if they comply to the criteria for level 2, level 3, they can actually become what they call formally certified, the organization. In case you're interested, there are also people asking this, how to become an assessor, how to become a lead assessor. As you can see, there are basically 3 types of skills, of knowledge you need to have. As an assessor, you need to understand testing. For assessor, foundation, and for lead assessor, advanced. You need to understand TMMi. We'll come back to it later on, but there is a basic certification step. Step 1 is called TMMi Professional. So you have to pass this exam. And thirdly, you need to understand assessments. So you have completed a recognized TMMi assessor training. So there are a number of criteria. If you combine the criteria, you can become an official TMMi assessor or lead assessor. And if you have done that, you are so for 3 years. And after 3 years, you have to show the foundation you've done enough hours to keep your accreditation. Something more about the difference between the informal and formal assessments. I think we discussed that already in enough detail, so I'm leaving it. I think the main thing is a formal assessment is more rigorous. So interviewing, document study, bigger team size, and only a formal assessment is the basis for certification. But of course, if you start looking at TMMi, an informal assessment is typically all it takes to get going. Okay. Some results, if you want, or some things interested from a TMMi user survey. Some background, it was developed together with a number of universities to better understand the market needs, the benefits, the challenges with TMMi. And it's a TMMi user survey. So we went to the companies that were assessed over the years and say, please tell me what you have achieved, what the benefits are, what challenges, which life cycle you work with, etc., etc. The report, by the way, is free to be downloaded from the website on TMMi Foundation. Some highlights, at least some for me highlights. Where is it used? So who uses TMMi? First, this part. It seems that a large uptake of TMMi is in the financial sector. 37% of the TMMi users come from the financial sector, being either in the banking industry or the insurance industry. That's a huge group. The second largest group are IT companies. Those that are selling in my testing services, things like that. 30%. The third group, not listed here, are those who are more in the safety critical area. So healthcare, automotive, and the like. Also looking at which test levels is TMMi being used. What you see clearly is system integration testing, system testing, and UAT testing are the top priorities where TMMi is being used. At the same time, it's not the biggest group, but I think a substantial group is using it for more technical testing. 40% at unit component level, and more than 50% is also using it at component integration level. Interesting. And for which test types is it being used? Again, functional testing, regression testing, but also very, very much used for performance testing. 83% of users claim they're also using TMMi to structure and build their performance testing. And then some other non-functionals at the bottom. Usability, reliability, but also security, which is a main one today, of course, if you look at the world of software quality. We also talked about which are the benefits. Did you achieve any benefits in a certain area with TMMi? And to me, this was a surprise, because I think the metrics are quite high, to be honest. 88% of the companies doing TMMi in an agile context, in DevOps context, in a V model context, are actually reporting benefits in terms of product quality. Now think back on the agile report we talked about earlier. This may be the answer for companies doing agile and still facing challenges. And of course, it depends. Some say we have enhanced product quality, say we have reduced product risk. Some report in terms of number of defects. It depends on your objectives. But 88% of the TMMi users report benefits in product quality. This is what you can achieve in actually applying and using TMMi. A 77%, very high, I think, as well, report benefits in terms of test efficiency, reduced product cost, accelerated software delivery, increased testing productivity are typical metrics that are being used to report and to measure test efficiency. Compliance. And this is, of course, something which, especially in the world of safety critical or the finance world, will play a role. 84% say it's important for us to have compliance. Compliance could mean achieve TMMi certification or could mean achieve standard compliance. And also a high number came back to people benefits. Improve team morale, which is more or less related to also an agile. Improve test engineering discipline. So these are benefits that are reported, also discussed in detail in the survey. Interesting, we also asked people to quantify benefits. And here are some examples. And again, there's more in the survey report, but this is what people report back. If you look at level 3 benefits, increased productivity by 70%. Number of test tools from 10 to 6. Higher product risk coverage, DDP, which means defect detection percentage. What percentage of defects are you finding versus what are you missing and we'll know the next stage. DDP increased from 60, 70%. Retail company, healthcare company, I think, automotive and IT company. Level 4 companies, time to market reduction, 7%. DDP improvement. Development cycle from 3 months to 1 month. Reduced cost of external testers because our own testers have more knowledge and skills. Banking, IT company. Level 5, DDP production by 30%. Test estimation now highly accurate. Test efficiency improved. Regression test cycle. Insurance companies, IT company, I think a consultancy company. So these are the benefits that are being achieved doing TMMi. I think they are quite strong and interesting. Finally, because I like trends, I like metrics, I talk about trends, meaning that, so is TMMi getting bigger? And I have here 2 trends. One is on certified organizations, which is ultimately the goal of TMMi. We want to improve organizations. And some would like to be certified, some not. And we have number of certified professionals. So here is about organizational side of things. This is about the people side of things. And what you can see in both graphs, and this is the Excel generated line, is that we are growing. And this is 220. And if you look at 221, and of course we know that there is a pandemic going on in the world. So I think without the pandemic, the growth would be even better. But now we're seeing that if you look at certified professionals, for the first 2 quarters of 2021, we again see a huge growth. Unfortunately, I don't have the Q3 metrics yet, but certified companies, we see a huge growth. 350% growth, Q1, Q2, 2021, compared to the year before. So we'll see a trend, I think, of TMMi getting bigger and bigger in the world. And I think benefits, as reported in the previous report, help that context. Because they can help people understand what are we trying to achieve? What is the business value of TMMi? No one should be doing TMMi for the sake of TMMi. Do TMMi or do test process improvement with another model if you like, trying to achieve business benefits, more product quality, higher efficiency, better time to market. These are the things we're trying to achieve. It can never be a goal by itself to achieve TMMi level 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Finally, some comments about implementing TMMi. So I would say some reminders, partly from the survey and partly also from my own experiences. So how do you implement TMMi? How do you achieve level 2, level 3, whatever you want to achieve? First of all, we talk about benefits a lot, but of course there are also costs involved. And what we see, again, this comes from the survey, so report, is that typically people invest 3 to 5% of their testing costs to achieve these benefits. By the way, you also see quite a large percentage that are even investing more. So it's not something which comes for free. You have effort put in, develop processes, and deploy the processes, coach people on a new way of working. There is training involved, training within the TMMi, but also other training. Maybe you hire an external consultant, a certified TMMi professional or a certified TMMi test process improver. If you have an assessment being taken place, That's also cost. And there are also kind of indirect costs, like the learning curve. If you are applying something new, and in some organizations there's a position to change, it also takes time. Doing marketing internally. So you might say, first of all, there is also costs. There's not only benefits. Secondly, if you are doing test process improvement, we also probably know the plan, do, check, act cycle. And there is a model which has been issued by the TMMi Institute in America, which says it's called IDEAL. And IDEAL is about phases, if you want, for doing test process improvement, for doing actually process improvement in general. And TMMi has not its own improvement model. It says, let's adopt, let's use IDEAL because it's good enough, it's documented, it's available, it's freely available, why not? And you can see here is initiating, set context, build sponsorship. And this has to do with set your policy, set your goals before doing something. A phase where they call diagnosing. So do an assessment or a quick scan, either self-quick scan or guided. Look at where am I against the model? What are core recommendations? Then a phase I call establishing, set priorities. Which of the recommendations are more important? Plan actions, develop an approach. Acting. Activities like create solution. So develop a process, develop a template, develop a whatever needs to be done. Pilot it, refine and implement, deploy. Acting phase. You might say there where it happens. And finally, a phase at the end, learn. Okay, we've done this phase, we've done these improvements. What went right? What went wrong? How can we do it, take it to the next level? So IDEAL is available, just reporting that to you. IDEAL is available as an improvement model, which is also adopted by TMMi, saying this is the way to use TMMi. It's not it's an implementation model if you want. If you want to get started with TMMi, there are probably at least 3 things to consider. And this is about, are you ready for TMMi? I would say at the beginning, there needs to be some kind of test policy, or you need to have a discussion with management. What are we trying to achieve? A policy is at the heart of anything. What is the business value we're trying to achieve? Is there management commitment on quality? Is quality important enough in the organization? If there are release decisions being made, are they sometimes not taken? Are we not releasing the product because the quality is not good enough? So how dedicated, is an important question, also a difficult one, is management to achieving higher levels of product quality? Because it will cost them something. You might say number 1 is very much a managerial thing. Management makes difference. The second thing is improvement is a project. You cannot do this like if people come to me and say, oh, well, I've got 4 hours a week to do TMMi. Forget it. You will lose the 4 hours to the project. It's a project which has resources, which has planning, which has milestones. So organize it seriously. If you don't do it seriously, you will not achieve anything. So have committed resources. People who are at least, let's say, 3 days a week or 2.5 days a week free from projects. So the second one is, first one is management, and the second one is organize it seriously as a project. And the third one is one we didn't talk about yet, but the maturity of the development organization. if you will start improving test planning, but project planning is very, very poor. The question is, how good can you get at test planning? If you want to build good test designs, but the requirements are very, very, very poor, how can you get a test design? If you are testing, but configuration management is very poor, defects keep on re-appearing in future releases. So there is a dependency, you might say, that if the development organization is not ready for it, how good can you get a testing? I always say there can be one difference. So you can achieve level 2 in TMMi with poor development organization, but that's it. Then you have to also increase this one. If I personally are asked to do an assessment of the company for TMMi, I typically also look at project planning. I typically also look at requirements engineering. I typically also look at configuration management to understand constraints for achieving something in test process improvement. Also from the survey, we asked people things like, so what worked for you? What was important when you used TMMi and achieved the benefits? So this comes from the survey, not from me. Involve testers when defining processes. I very much like that. Don't have external consultants or 2 people writing the processes. Do it with a whole team. Everyone who's involved in executing processes should be involved in defining the processes. They know. Make it more practical, you might say. A difficult one, but an important one, is ensure you interpret the model. We talked about earlier that the goals are mandatory and the practice is not. So make sure you understand the goals and interpret the model to do the things that you actually need. Don't do it as a checklist. Identify process champions, those who can make it happen, who are the game changers. People also said, if you're doing this, people like processes. But even more people like templates. And maybe a template can have a process embedded with it or share best practices. That helps enormously. And I know there are discussions in the world that a best practice is not a best practice, it is good practice. I don't care. What I mean by that is, if someone has written a good test design, I want to see it. I want to learn from it because it helps me. So building a best practice library or a good practice library, whatever you want to call it, helps enormously to implement test designs or test planning or test monitoring or whatever. Define long-term and short-term goals. Of course, you want to achieve level 2 in let's say 9 months, but no organization stays motivated for 9 months. They want to know what is different in 2 months from today. So have short-term goals like in 2 months, well, these things ready. Make sure there are short cycles and there's a, I would say, wider perspective, a wider objective. Next one also makes sense, I think. Change takes time, realistic expectations. I think we're always very good, also in testing, to say, oh, well, let's get this done in 2 months or 3 months. In the end, it takes longer than you think. Ensure a communication plan is available. Test process improvement is actually change management. And change management requires marketing. And marketing requires communication. So make sure you don't focus on the processes only and think, oh, people will all take it. No, communication plan. And they also came back saying, well, initially, I don't think we need an assessment. Just a kick grant will do the job. So save cost, start small, and from there on, take the next step. Test improvement manifesto. Some I would say recommendations from me. Make the difference. I don't think we should write detailed processes. We should write, and this is also a challenge, just enough process. The mainstream, how we do things. The flexibility should be in the people. They should be trained as well to understand their job. Almost like people over processes. On the previous slide, we talked about already is best practices and templates. Templates are great. But I would like to see personally, if I'm somewhere, is give me some real life examples. Some good or best practices. Deployment orientation over process orientation. It's easy to write a new process, to develop a template, to get a new tool. That's the easy part. Implementing is the most difficult part. People often say that process development is 30% and deployment is 70% of the effort. Coaching people, making sure they actually act accordingly. Peer reviews over core process quality assurance. Sometimes you get these I would say, external people, my external department, who check whether things are according to a template. And although this may be important in some organizations, I'd rather have a test plan even to another test manager and say, can you have a look, please? Give me some real good feedback. So peer reviews are more important than some kind of theoretical check about following the process, following the templates. And finally, and I think we talked about this a lot already, and also doing TMMi. TMMi is good, but it should be business driven and not model driven. You're doing this for a reason. Last few slides, how to get involved. And this, I think, is also mentioned in the introduction by Natalia. There are ways as a professional to get involved in TMMi. It starts, as you can see on this picture also here on the top, by maybe following a course, but becoming a TMMi professional to get the basic knowledge on TMMi. There's an exam in place. You can take with a course or without a course. There's a syllabus in place. Things like very much like ISTQB almost. And then there are two different streams depending on what you want. Some people say, I want to go for the assessment time. I want to become an assessor or even a lead assessor. That's a way of focusing. And that means taking a course in assessments and the like. Or, which is probably a larger part, is I want to become a consultant. I want to go to companies and help them, either as an internal consultant or external consultant, in becoming better with TMMi. I have a lot of testing knowledge to share. And this is called a certified TMMi test process improver. By the way, these persons are all listed and visible on the website. So if you are looking for a certified test process improver, go to the website and check, hey, there's the one in my region. So this is a way as a professional to get involved in TMMi. There is, if you want, a career path with TMMi. How to get involved as an organization? Of course, you can become what I call a TMMi recognized training provider. You can start offering TMMi professional training locally in the market, in Polish, in Poland. I also explained there are companies that provide assessment services to the market. They typically have employees who are lead assessors or assessors. And sometimes companies do both. This is, of course, nice to have these companies. They make the difference. But ultimately, get involved in the organization is we adopt TMMi as our model for improving our test process, and we want to become a level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5 companies. as a bank, as an insurance company, as an IT company, as a safety critical company. So there are three ways: recognized training provider, the assessment service provider, but especially I would say, as a company, say, this is the way forward. We want to achieve the benefits which were reported in the survey. My summary, and it comes from a course I recently gave, and then they wrote down, so what do you think are the pros from TMMi? And there were actually, I thought, a good summary of all the things I've been saying. So here are they again on this slide. And people say, I like TMMi because it's objective driven. You can work from the goals and not from all details, because all details are like supporting. You can set your goals, your objective, and based on that, choose the parts that you like. People also said, I like it very much because it's ICP related. It uses the same terminology. It uses all parts which are also in the ICP syllabi. And ICP, of course, is the worldwide leading certification team. It's well founded. It's not a commercial model which was actually developed, let's say, in a few months or whatever. It's been developed based on research together with many universities, best practice libraries and things like that. It gives you very clear priorities. If you are level 2 companies, you will know which 5 process areas are in scope and should be prioritized. Self-assessments can be done and are all that's needed to get started, and not that hard to do. People also said it's freely available. You go to the website, everything is downloadable, go for it. It can be used with Agile and DevOps. An open community, and very important for many people is, it's not stopped there. We will have a new version of the model. We will have new versions of syllabi. There is ongoing development. We have a technical team that actually implements these changes. If you want more information, further reading, there's a number of books available. Some are in Dutch, some in Chinese, some in Spanish. I don't know if your Spanish always, but of course, some are also available in English. But I think the main thing is to go to the website of the TMMi Foundation, www.tmmi.org, and you can actually download many things from there. And I guess on the local chapter website, you can find the Polish TMMi model. So also there will be issues there to download. We will have a short, I would say, Q&A session. We talked about it before. Let's see how many people of you have questions. But if you want to ask the question later, you are thinking tomorrow or the day after about something, please feel free to use my email address and send me the question. Yeah, there's no problem, and that's why it's here. Also, I think if you are lost with English and want to write a question to your Polish board, I'm sure they can help you in answering the question about TMMi. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Eric. Actually, I have one question for you. As you said, TMMi Level 1 is for free for all the companies, and also said that TMMi is not a tick-off list. So can an organization be assumed to be at level 2 if it does not meet all the requirements for level 2? Level 2, for example, hypothetical. It does not have a test strategy, but fulfills all the other requirements. Does 100% of the requirements have to be met?
Good question, actually. It's a very good question, isn't it? Yeah. So the question is, do you have to meet all the requirements to actually be a TMMi Level 2 company? And the answer is no. Actually, it's a good question, because I don't know exactly the details at heart, but I think there are, if there are goals which are not fully satisfied, but largely satisfied, we call it in assessments, okay? So not everything is in place. And if that happens only in 1 or 2 places, level 2, you can still be level 2 company. Because sometimes you say, hey, this part of the model is relevant for me, but it's not entirely relevant for me. So I don't want to spend too much effort on it, because that would mean TMMi becomes a tick-off list. You understand? Yeah.
Yes.
So you can actually leave out some parts which are less relevant and still become a TMMi level 2 company. Yes, that's possible. So a good question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions from the audience or in the chat, perhaps?
If you want to ask question, just raise the hand and we'll unmute you. For the people from the chat, from the Zoom, if you have question on the Facebook, please go ahead, type comment on the Facebook and we'll collect this and ask Eric. Well, I don't see any questions. Natalia, maybe from your side? No,
From me.
nothing from me, so we can either wait a few more minutes and I will start to say to thank you to Eric. So thank you to Eric, especially for the very nice speech and the information, a lot of information and clarification.
Too much, yeah.
This is always, important stuff to clarify, and to Natalia for organizing such a nice event. And that was a question that in fact bothered me as well, that whether I need to 100 according to the book or not. So this was very important to me to know this. Okay, last chance. If not, then exactly as Eric mentioned, if you have more question and you want to catch him, so go ahead, find him, ping him or tweet him. Or if you have any problems and would like our support in those communication, we are pretty open. We can help you in communication, not only Eric, but the whole organization.